Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Friday Tech Seminar. We are so pleased that Monica Guidry has joined us today. She's back by popular demand to talk about a subject that all of us probably want to know a little bit more about, and that is work-life balance. Very important in our lives, especially in the lives of people who work many hours of the week. And I know most of you do that. Monica is a specialist in behavioral health, counseling, professional coaching, and in work-life and well-being programs. And she's currently an associate vice president at UTHealth, where she heads up the employee assistance and wellness programs. Let's give a big welcome to Monica Guidry.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me okay? Is it on? Okay, good. So one of the things that you'll notice is that I changed the title from balance to coordination. And if you talk about something that is never going to be accomplished, it would be work and life balance. So if we can think about it in a different way, I'm hoping that this presentation will give you a perspective that will make it, instead of I'm a failure, to I have different priorities today. So just kind of just a switch. And what we know is what we tell ourselves is usually how we feel. So I think that probably would be a helpful way to move on. Okay, so do I have to use the mouse? Or not? Yeah. So when things go, which way did it go?
It's the mouse.
Oh, okay. All right. So one of the things we're going to talk about are the complex components of emotional intelligence. And why are we talking about emotional intelligence when what we're talking about is when what you want to get out of this is more around how do I get my life and my work, and so that I have some of both success. So the challenge today is to understand the role of emotional intelligence in this. And as we become more and more overwhelmed or more and more happy, what happens to our ability to be aware of what's triggering me, or be aware of how I can approach a subject from a different perspective. We're going to do a mindfulness exercise. Anybody do mindfulness or meditation, prayer? So we're going to talk a little bit about why that's important, because one of the techniques is when we become aware that my response may not get me to the goal that I want, then there's some techniques that you might use. And it's amazing the importance of breathing. Many people that are involved in sports know that you have to have oxygen in order to perform. So same for our brain. We're gonna, I want you to identify at least one new goal as we go through this. That could be, you want to learn more about a tool that we talk about, you want to think about things a little bit differently. And the reason is, once you declare there's a goal, then you're more likely to follow through on it. And then anybody involved in sports? Okay, few people, and not now or before as you were growing up. So what's the one thing that sports always has available to you? Besides friends. So if you think of any of the sports, soccer, hockey, football, basketball, who are the other people on the field or at practice when the athletes are out there? Coaching. And as we become adults, we sometimes think I'm less than if I need a coach. And I want people to think I'm privileged to be able to have someone that I can talk to about how to adjust my goals, my ideas, my thinking. And I think of coaching as a thought partner, someone that you can just do free flow thought process, and they can step back and say, is that really what you were intending to say? Is that really how you see yourself or other people? And that feedback, in addition to identifying that one goal, is the difference between you thinking you look like that TikTok dancer and how you actually dance. And the difference is, I may think that I am hitting the golf ball straight, and all the coach has to do is adjust my shoulders, adjust my hips, adjust my hold to help me be successful. And that's the difference between I'm going to learn something today and then I'm going to just go out and do it. So I want to challenge you on thinking about that. So let's start with this reflection exercise, all right? So you can have a piece of paper. You can, or feel free to kind of think through this. There's no right or wrong answers. I think that's important for everybody to know. And you can either close your eyes or you can keep your eyes open. Don't worry about your neighbor. That's not the critical piece. And I want you to be aware of your breathing. So think about the breathing not from that perspective that we usually do, which is, just, yes, I'm okay, I'm breathing, my pulse is high. But more about, if you think about breathing, you're less likely to think about anything else. So this is where we're going to go. And this is called a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And for those of you that might have seen commercials on Better Health on TV, there's the apps that people use for mental health, Calm. There's a few of these apps that are out there. This is one of those exercises that is pretty typical that is out there as a starting mindfulness exercise for people. And again, I talk to a lot of the sports figures because they're more willing to say, I tried this technique. Michael Phelps is one of the ones that really talks about when he is anxious or he is perseverating over something that's going on, he uses this technique. So we're going to start. Look around you and either list on your paper or in your mind 5 things that you see around you. You don't have to say it out loud, just. Okay. Reach out and touch 4 things that you can feel. Now, list 3 things you hear. The next one, acknowledge 2 things you smell. And although this says you can get up and move to the other area, and the pizza's not here yet, but just take in whatever you smell right now. And then acknowledge the one thing that you can taste right now. So during that time, were there a lot of thought interruptions as you were doing these 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? So tell me about those interruptions. What got in the way? Was it too slow? Was it too fast? And the reason I'm asking is because when we begin looking at the emotional intelligence, if we are aware what gets in the way of us being successful, then you can have an opportunity to change it. So if you were going to do this by yourself, and the way I was doing this was too slow, then pick up the pace for you. Because the reality is, the more time that your mind is idle, or you're thinking about, oh, did I think of 5? Or maybe that was just 3. There's nothing else to touch. That's the interruptions that kind of get us off of our mindfulness techniques. And when we are stressed and not at our best, and our work-life coordination is skewed to one thing or another, or all things have fallen apart, this might be one of those techniques that you use to kind of move forward. So, anybody heard of emotional intelligence? Okay, so what's the first thing that comes to mind when you learned about emotional intelligence? Anybody just throw some idea? Pardon me? Empathy. Okay, that's definitely one of the core qualities of an emotionally intelligent person. Pardon me? Listening and being able to ask good questions gets you in the mindset of being attentive to somebody or something that you need to pay attention to. Okay, so I put in here empathy and communication skills, as well as social leadership skills, will be central to your work-life balance. And this was not my article, so it still says balance in here. And personal relationships. What's the one thing people miss the most during COVID? Other people. Oh my gosh. I mean, just think over the past 2 years, we weren't sitting in rooms. And if we were, there were 3 chairs between us. We were all in masks. It was definitely an experiment in social behavior. And so with that, sometimes we might have to relearn a couple things. And so that's another piece of this. So the ability to manage feelings and handle stress is another aspect of emotional intelligence that's been found to be important if you're going to coordinate your work and your life. Okay. Then there's a number of other people that give you ideas about what an emotional intelligence is. And one of the things that, if you haven't seen this, the U.S. Surgeon General's framework for workplace mental health and wellness has to do with offering both trainings and opportunities for people to be able to be in the mindset in which they can engage, do their work, have a life. It's not clear. It's not an indication that everyone will be the same. It's not an indication that, you know, you're going to achieve your salary that you're looking for, or that you'll get published, or you'll get an R01, whatever it might be. It's more about being in the moment, being aware, and figuring out what you want to leverage. So we'll talk about that a little bit. There's also some 2023, there's a workforce mental health trends. And part of what when we were talking about this before is, how do we re-engage with the people that we're studying with, we're working with, we're collaborating with, at a time when we're just now beginning to figure out again, how do I do this and still be successful without all the stress? Challenges, low unemployment rate, which is great for people looking for a job, right? High competition for talent and high turnover of burned out employees. So we talked a little bit about, without Googling, what are some of the factors of emotional intelligence? We talked about empathy. We talked a little bit about listening. Anything else come to mind? Well, there are a number of publications out there now that make emotional intelligence their priority. So it refers to a distinct combination of emotional and social skills and competencies that influence an overall capacity to cope effectively. Oh, what does that mean? It means that if we can slow ourselves down a little bit and figure out what priority we're trying to accomplish, then we can begin to think about solutions on what we need to leverage. So, anybody have kids? Do they wait for any of the things that are going on in your life for their priority? No. And do your responsibilities as a learner as well as a worker stop because that's going on? No. And the biggest thing with kids is what happens if the daycare is closed, if the water mains break and there's no water. Before it was because of COVID, and you have an assignment that you have to get to. And there's not a good solution. So where do you go with how to prioritize and what options exist? And I know that there are a number of other examples of that dichotomy that happens. Anybody else think of a situation that just raises your stress level and you're not sure what to do next? Pardon me? Yes. Sick and work. And what do we tell people now? What do we tell people now? Don't come to work if you're sick. That sounds great. And yet, you know, some of us are limited with our leave time that's available. Some of us are limited with, I can't concentrate because I am sick. So those are the kinds of things that do come up. Another piece, so this comes from multi-health systems. So some of us, I use MHS a lot because of the scales that they use. And we can begin to look at those scales and determine with some of our faculty and our staff over at UTHealth, what's getting in their way of them being civil, empathic, successful, and it's not always the same thing. So this is about scales based on how individuals answer those questions, but they're valid and they're reliable. A couple of other people have said, okay, here's some indications: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills. And Goldman is one of the key people that wrote about emotional intelligence for the past years. If I asked each of you what one of those variables means, you'll probably get, if I asked 4 people, I would probably get 4 different explanations or examples of any of these key areas, right? So if I talk about self-regulation, someone may say one thing, it's going to mean something else to somebody else, right? So the reason I'm talking about this today is you're going to hear a lot of people talk about emotional intelligence. And the most critical piece is this: it's not IQ. It can change. You can be somewhere on the scales 1 month, and the next month, if you check it again, it will change. And it will change for 2 reasons. One, because of that coordination that you're at. And another is because you might have learned something new that elevates that score for you the next time you take it. So one of the most important things that I think of when we start this process is to use the same definition for emotional intelligence. Because otherwise, what's going to happen? You're going to be in a conversation, somebody's going to say, I'm really working on my emotional intelligence. And one of the things that they may say is, well, you're very empathic. So why would you be working on it? And you're going to see how complicated we are as humans to achieve the things that we need to know so we can figure out how to coordinate these two parts of our life. And there may be a third part of our life. There's the work, there's the life. Anybody could think of another one? So think of what's in between, and that is the quality of each one of those that we forget about. So how do you know if you see it? Does anybody could think of someone that you say, I want that. I want how they just approached that very difficult situation. Anybody seen it? No? Okay, so think through it. Think about it. What that means is typically they handle a very high emotional situation or a very difficult decision in a way that looks at options that are a little bit different than what people would say. So I stay home or I go to work. What else might there be? How else can that conversation go when you're looking for solutions and you feel horrible and you don't have the stress tolerance to kind of think past those things? This is where that coach will help you work through that. Who has what you want? I'm amazed by one leader in our organization who has been told that their job is to get this person to act right. And their job in acting right is there's a whole list of things that this person supposedly did that impacted other people negatively. And when I observe how he approaches it, he does it with respect. He does it with wanting to learn more about what was going on with that person. He wanted to help them see that there were some options in there. And it really elevated my understanding of this was a high tense situation. What was going on with you that you were able to kind of lower your voice, be attentive, listen, and not think heads are going to roll. And sometimes it's how we communicate. So when I know my stress tolerance level is low, I will walk in the house. I'll look to see if my daughter is home from college. I'll look to see dishwasher's empty. All your dishes are here. I have a choice to make. I can either slam the doors, open it, put the dishes away myself. I can walk away and ignore it. Or is there another option for me during that time? Now, why is that? Why is that considered coordination? Because I can either move that conversation and lower my stress level, or I can just bask in my upsetness, in how overwhelmed I am. I can take, okay, I won't say an hour. I can take 30 to 40 minutes and really just, it's start of a weekend and I just started out on the wrong. So I can pull myself down into a cycle that's not going to help me solve a problem. And that's the difference between stress and my ability to kind of move the needle in a positive way. So what influences these? My attitudes, right? My culture might. Think about that, how my culture might influence either my own status or somebody else's to resolve the problem of I'm tired. I still got reports to do. And now I've got these other things that are gnawing away at me. My values, past experiences. Ever walked into a new group of people and you think, ooh, that rubbed me the wrong way? And that's one of those times where you can say, so I don't trust that person because I know what this is like. And we immediately go to that judgment based on a past experience, as opposed to recognizing that that was the reaction that you had and what are you going to do about it? Beliefs, mine and others. And this goes with values too. One of the people I was working with really struggled with the values around, if I think somebody is lying or cheating, then they are a bad person. And I'll do whatever I can to elevate that everybody sees that in that person. And it's just a phenomenal faculty member, and researcher. The challenge with that belief and that value is that it impacted on his ability to be an effective leader, as opposed to, I'm going to take you down. You're lying, and I'm going to make sure that that you don't get what you want. And so our beliefs, our values, our past experiences, our culture play a role in whether or not we can feel good enough or aware enough that I got to step back a little bit. And if I don't, where's my balance at that point? It's tied up in everything that's going on here. Probably my blood pressure's rising. Probably I'm walking around more. I'm thinking about the things that aren't going to get me where I need to be. And that behavior is going to target me, not the person that I'm upset with. Our relationships are important, and my well-being. So think of your well-being as researchers. There are unbelievable deadlines, right? Or classes, or there's something that you're just not getting with this. And your sleep is not good. You're eating not as healthy, and so pizza and cake. So we think about the high sugar and what that does to our bodies and our mind, and we think, and it's not bad every once in a while. The challenge is when you go for that, when you go for skipping a meal and eating the peanut butter crackers, when you go for, maybe you try to go to sleep, you can't, you're perseverating, it's a very difficult time. Also, you know, the idea of I'm going to forego my exercise because I've got this deadline, I've got to go pick up things from home, parents are coming into town, I'm leaving town, all kinds of things get in the way. And that well-being or someone else's well-being is impacting on how I'm going to be successful with this. So you can measure emotional intelligence. It's not IQ, it can fluctuate. And when I talk about some of the challenges of just saying, today I was emotionally intelligent, and you look at all of the different factors that go into making up the scales for emotional intelligence. This is not a one and done process. So you're trying to coordinate these conflicting priorities. You're trying to make sense out of a relationship that may not be going the way you want it to. You're influenced by your values, your past, your current relationships. Who do you need to please? How do you get things done? So do you think there's hope with anyone getting to the middle with all those variables? I see a couple of heads shaking. Why do you think there's hope? And there is, so that's the right answer. But what comes to mind when you see all this? Anybody? Okay, so if you see all of these variables, it means that at any one time, not all these things are happening. So focus on your goal. What is your one goal that you want to accomplish? And what you end up finding as you go from that one goal, there's probably 1.5 and a third and a fourth. And depending on what your goal is, you may need to leverage something that you hadn't considered before. So I'll give you an example. If you know that you've been sick, your sleep is not good, and yet you have to face a very difficult situation, and you acknowledge that you have to face that situation, and you acknowledge that that's one of the variables that are happening, then the very first piece of emotional intelligence is to step back, take a breath, and remember this diagram, because look at how often well-being comes up in my wheel. And that is the start of this. And sometimes well-being could be exercise. It could be primary care physicians, your annual medical well woman, well man, medical aspects of taking care of yourself. It may just be sleep. It could be just spending time with a loved one or having fun and laughing. But that well-being plays a role in every one of these key factors about emotional intelligence. Now, this is a slide. You'll have access to this so that you can dig a little deeper, because it's kind of hard to see all of the things in here. But if you look at, let's talk about this. If you look at stress management, I might interpret stress management meaning that I'm going to go work out and therefore I will deal with my stress in a physical way. Other people will say, I'm going to go meditate. Other people will say, I'm going to go spend some time with friends. I'm going to go out to eat because I want to do that. But use these definitions if you're thinking of emotional intelligence, because as I mentioned before, what one person feels as stress management, another person may define as very stressful. So think about what these mean. And if it talks about flexibility, ever feel that sometimes when things are narrowing in, you become more rigid? That there's only one right answer? That don't bother with the facts, just let me get through this day? And if that's one day every few months, not so bad. I mean, we are human. But if that's your go-to, that flexibility gives you that chance to kind of step back and say, what am I trying to accomplish? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What do I need to do? Same with decision-making, interpersonal skills, self-expression. So think about these definitions, because they could be different than what you've thought of. And why is that important? Because it's going to make a difference in every one of these variables here in your self-care. I should have. Get rid of the shoulds, talk about what is. We talk about social relationships. We talk about giving back, right? We talk about what is our spiritual self. What is important to me? And where's the why? Y'all are here because there's a why that you all defined in your life, and that's what brought you here. The why of what you want to accomplish, the why of why this is your career that you're looking for, the why of you're putting other priorities off so that you can accomplish where you're going. And what we know about the spiritual health of people is we always go back to the why. Why am I here? What can I contribute? And more important, what would people miss if I wasn't here? What am I contributing that others would miss if I'm not here? And that's some of the thinking that comes through here: stress reduction and burnout prevention. So everyone talks about the burnout, emotional exhaustion, depersonalization. And a lot of that, I'm going to challenge people to say that comes from what we tell ourselves, how we approach an issue, how we balance. If I'm choosing that this week is the week I'm going to do taxes, then I know that that's my goal, and I will prioritize what I need: organization. I need other people to maybe not call and ask requests. I probably won't do a lot of social things right then. And if I don't accomplish it, I probably will tell myself I was not effective in my strategies. And then I just pushed it to another week. So all of these things go on at once. So when you begin to pick your goal and your activity, it's about what you tell yourself, how you do it, and how you help others help you do it. So things are not going away. And a lot of it was connected to each other. And wasn't it great how quick we pivoted to being remote? We didn't have a choice. This is closed, this is closed, this is closed. And one of the great things is that Zoom made a lot of money. WebEx made a lot of money. Now Teams is making a lot of money, because that's technology that we use to be successful. But it came with a cost, right? And that's where that coordination happens. So you find ways to coordinate. But we missed out on the social connection. We missed out on, a lot of times we weren't even able to go to our organized religion or our relaxation places or our meditation. So just recognize that this is constant in choosing how to coordinate things. It's about goals, about my thought process. It's about my stress tolerance. So another issue that comes up a lot in debates that you may hear is, here's this belief, and anything on the other side is wrong, bad, and you put labels and values on that. What I'm challenging people to think through this process of emotional intelligence is, once you pick that there is not duality, there's only one truth, you're limiting your options to find solutions to what you might be experiencing, what others might be experiencing, and a solution and a collaboration. So it is possible for two truths to happen at the same time. It's possible for three truths to happen at the same time. And to be able to say yes and instead of yes, no, makes the difference between thinking about what do I want to accomplish with this versus I'm standing where I am and anything else around me is not valuable to me. So this duality piece is another part of that flexibility that we were talking about. There can be two truths. Oh, I think I clicked the wrong thing. Here we go. Here we go. So, do you know how to describe what you are experiencing? There's being in the EAP and well-being services, my mind comes from, I'm a white female, born and raised in Texas, and went to college in the South. So how I approach a situation is based on my upbringing. If I don't care about anything else. And so one of the things that's been really helpful is to get some diversity into the thinking that happens. Diversity means I've got to step back. So I'll use this example. I adopted my daughter from China, brought her to the US. She's now 22, she's in college. And, you know, we, family at Thanksgiving, just wonderful. And we were all talking about different things. And all of a sudden, we're talking about, you know, diversity and bias and things like that. And we did it from our white Texas perspective. And the fact that she had the ability to say, Mama, I'm not white, in front of all of the family members, it was such an eye-opening experience. And of course I knew she was white. This is my girl, adopted from China. I love this, but what she said is, when I walk into a room, I am not seen as your daughter. I am seen as an Asian woman, and I therefore am treated that way. And the fact that that's why I come from my beliefs, I come from my background, I come from many different things. And if I don't bring diversity into my discussions and into my life, then I don't have the ability to work with my daughter from an emotional well-being perspective. And that's what, if you look around and don't see something, be open to hearing something in a way that then says to me, tell me more. Tell me more about what it's like for you to walk into a classroom in which you are judged in a way that I didn't know that was happening. And so we become learners. And that is one of the key things that can help with that wheel around how do I make myself available to see what might be impacting on my well-being. And then my decisions that go along with that. So when we talk about work life, one of the things that I talk with my counseling clients about is when they feel something, when they're angry, when they are frustrated, when they're embarrassed, when they are, and I do a lot of work with residents, medical residents and nursing students. Also, you're in a room, you're in front of people, they're asking you to present a case, and the first thing that comes to mind is, I'm not like you, or I'm not good enough, or all of those things that go through your mind that stop that ability to have a conversation, and then increase that stress level, and therefore changes the balance and the coordination in your personal and your work life. And my guess is, although those are examples that I have over there, my guess is that they're probably very similar kinds of examples that y'all deal with every day too. I became aware that many of the things that we talk about, even on these apps, are things like anxiety or things like depression. And yet there are many cultures that don't have a corresponding name for the symptoms that happen when you're depressed or when you're anxious. So we need to say more about, and so this is one of those emotional intelligence pieces. If we're going to balance how people can ask for help, we need to describe things in a different way. And it takes being able to say, and think about that before. Thanks for sharing it. Now, what do you recommend that we put on these posters or on this app or in my life? And as you leave today and you think about what are your priorities? Okay, I've got 6 things that I have to get accomplished this weekend. Take a breath, pick one, but most important, as you're taking that breath, name it. What is it that you're currently feeling? And if you name it, then you can put it into perspective. I get this. I am anxious because I do have to do a presentation today. They may not like what I do. What are my options available to it? At least I can name it and not just sit and fret. Doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes I fret a lot. When that happens, a new variable can come in. When I get a phone call from someone that says, can you please come to, and our president's on the 17th floor. So when they say, can you come to 17? There's also a lot of other people on the 17th floor. Well, where do I go? I go to the, oh my gosh, I'm not prepared. Oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? Oh my gosh. And that's that piece of owning it and just sitting and saying, I don't know what they want. Let me go to 17 and figure that out. Does it happen all the time? Got to practice it. Really have to practice, just like how you're going to turn and hit that golf ball in the right direction. And then help your team and yourself. And your team might be you and your coach, your team might be you and your friend, your team might be, your whole work group, your team might be from home. How are you going to navigate it? And put it into that perspective of I feel it, I name it, I own it, and now what am I going to do? Because I'm choosing that this isn't going to go out off the rails today. And then do it again. Repetition, repetition. So this is a good wheel. If everybody's going to get this, then it's available there. This, when we talk about wheel well-being, and if you are familiar with SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Organization, they have 8 to 9 dimensions of well-being. Some have 14 dimensions of well-being. But a lot of times I have people take this wheel and then say, where are you on this wheel? And if everyone is equal, then we do it again, because that's not realistic. It's not realistic, in any time. And just because something is low, that you're not spending as much time on exercise as you want to, or you're not, if you look at your relationships, your spirituality of any of those, some may be high, but it's not the goal to have everything be a 10. The goal is that you can identify what it is that you want to accomplish. You figure out where you are on this and what are the #1 priorities you need. So maybe it is more social and occupational. And so for right now, the financial may have to be a little bit lower than the others, because you're working towards a better financial. But in order to do that, you've got to focus on the occupational and maybe the social to get you there. So this is a dynamic tool. It's another tool that we use sometimes for awareness, because if use all of your senses, if you see it, if you feel it, if you can touch it, you can hear it, those are the things that will get our mind moving in that right direction. So one other tool, and this is what I use a lot for before meetings. It's called a self-audit. So you've been asked to come to the 17th floor, or you've been asked to do the presentation, or you've been asked to accomplish something within your family. Then the very first thing, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And what do I want to happen? Why is that important? Because I'm being aware. I'm paying attention to where I'm sitting and what could influence my reaction to whatever it is that I'm going to be doing. I'm aware of it, name it, own it, and just be ready to pay attention to what is it I want to happen with this. And then here's the empathy. Someone mentioned empathy earlier, the empathy audit. What might the other person be thinking? What might they be feeling? And what might they want to happen? Because if I can put myself in their place, then it gives me that opportunity to think about that collaboration as opposed to conflict, competition, and the ability to walk out of an exchange in a positive way and not necessarily being frustrated all the time. Now, one of the things that I am aware of is that sometimes the other party is not willing to come to the table. So when you're aware of that, then practice some things that you can say, I think I'm going to think about what we just talked about, and walk away, because staying in that moment may not get you where you want to be. And you may find that you could have to come back and apologize for maybe a reaction that you had. This is another tool that I use, which is the importance of awareness. So have you ever been in a conversation with someone where it just went down the tube so quickly? And if you haven't, kudos. But one of the things that this diagram shows is that I can be a judger or I can be a learner. And this goes back to my ability to say, I can either let my anxiety escalate because I'm going to judge that what this person said, I don't believe, and they're against me. And I have all of these things that put me into this judger pit. I'm not listening anymore. I'm only paying attention to what's going on in my head. But you can switch and be a learner. Tell me more about that. Oh, that's different than what my idea was going to be. What's the best way for us to move forward? My go-to a lot is tell me more about this, because it buys me time to think about what I'm feeling and what trigger I might have just set off, versus, no, I'm going to tell you how this is going to go. Now, there are times when you make the decision that you need to stand up and say, no, let me just tell you that this is the way it's going to go. But those typically are the smaller times that we work on, because in addition, you may find something that you learned that you didn't think about before on this judger mode. And this is another tool that I use that talks about how often we go from here's some data and here's my action. Y'all being in the research scientist mode, you look at a lot of different variables. So some of this is going to come easy to you, so long as you can think about what's triggering you to move into a different way. I'm not going to show this, but this is an interesting, the link will be on here and you can play it because it's about a 5-minute video. We're getting close to pizza time. There are 2 videos I sometimes show. One, if you want to look it up, is called the Cleveland Clinic Empathy. And it's a video that demonstrates, it's just pictures of people in a hospital setting, and all of a sudden something will pop up and say, today's my birthday and I'm going to go celebrate. And another person says, I just got the news that my husband's diagnosis is terminal cancer. And another would say, you know, I have to say goodbye because they're going to take him off life support. So there's a number of different things that happen that we never know in most conversations what someone has experienced right before we walk in the door. So when we talk about empathy, there are those 3 things about what am I feeling, what am I thinking, what do I want to happen? But again, take it from the perspective of we don't know what someone has dealt with before. This is a foreign film about a little boy that goes to is on his way to school and he's late every single day. And this trigger warning, this is when teachers used to take the ruler and if you were wrong, growing up in a Catholic school, you were wrong, you got slapped. So every day, this kid comes to school and that's one of the things that happen. Until the teacher sees one day why he's late. I won't give it away, but it's a really powerful video that I think just drives home the need for us to be aware that we don't know everything, and compassion and empathy is what really can drive our successful relationships. Thank you so much for letting me talk for 45 minutes. I really appreciate it. If there's any questions, feel free. I can stay around a little bit. I know that y'all have a number of things planned, but more important, you've got my email address. And I hope that the rest of today and this evening brings you the camaraderie, the collegiality, and the ability to say, you know what, I might have learned just one thing today. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of your afternoon.